One. Hey guys, it's Adam Scougall, and I'm really pleased. This is the 5th week of Wine and Design at 4:30 p.m. and really glad if you're able to join us today. I've got a fabulous guest on. Before I introduce my wonderful guest, I'll just introduce me as always. I'm Adam Scougall, interior designer, and I create beautifully unique homes for people that are staying put. As always, if you would like to connect with me at any point, send me a private message. Let me know how I can contact you. I'd love to talk to you for a free 15-minute call just to talk about an up-and-coming project, whether it's decoration, renovation, whatever, and we can speak early next week about that. Just PM me. So I'm really pleased. As I said, it's the 5th week, but I've got a wonderful woman here sitting next to me. I think we're pretty okay with our setup here. I've got the wonderful Judith Briggs. Judith I've known around the traps, I guess you could say, for a while. We keep meeting up at these little parties to do with design over time. But Judith Briggs is a wonderful interior designer and also a colour specialist. Judith has written a fantastic book called Bye Bland. So she's an author, which is fantastic. We'll talk more about the book very shortly. Also a speaker, so I'm really pleased to speak to someone with all of that sort of know-how and knowledge. So how are you today, Judith?
I'm feeling great, Adam. And you?
I'm very well. I haven't had a sip of wine yet, Judith. Judith just asked me what colour my eyes were. We've just had a good old conversation. We did a bit of a test to make sure everything worked, which I do. We did that yesterday. And it's funny, Judith, isn't it? I said to you, I could have just recorded that half an hour because we just had a good old chat and we were laughing. And I was a bit mesmerised by you, Judith, yesterday, just by all the knowledge and your perspective with clients and how you approach it. It's amazing. Like we do very similar things, but we definitely do have our own nuances in terms of how we connect with people, don't you think?
Oh yeah, and I think that's the appeal for clients. You know, they can find a designer that they find that they have a really good rapport with, because it's so important when you're connecting and you're working in somebody's home. It's a very personal thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's great to learn from each other as well. Like I was learning from you, Judith, just in the way that you can analyse certain information from your client before you even begin. But before we do begin, I've got to say, tell me what you're drinking. I've got Chardonnay.
I've got a Riesling today. It's supposed to have hints of rose water, passion fruit and lime. How does that sound? Very exotic.
Oh, it sounds fabulous. Did you say it's a Riesling?
Yeah.
Riesling? Oh, yes. Lovely. I haven't had a Riesling for a while. You got a nice big glass there, Judith. You had a hard week.
It's not that big. It's not that big.
Oh, no, listen. It's just a hand when you pushed it towards the camera.
Yeah, it looked like a big bowl when I did that.
Just want to say a quick hello to, we've got Jan Marie. Do you know Jan Marie, Judith? Jan Marie.
No.
G'day, guys. Look forward to some colour inspo. You'll certainly be getting it here, darling, with Judith. So, you know, as we get the comments coming through and the people popping up, we might just here we go. Barbara, looking forward to hearing from you guys. Cheers. Wish I had a bar in my car. Oh, Barbara's in the car, Judith. So she wishes she had a bar in the car. How fantastic. Good on you, Barb. Thanks for chiming in there. But let's go over to you, Judith. I'm dying to get into the details with you. So I think it's good. How about I just hand over to you? Tell me about your career history so far in design.
I've been working in, as a designer for 18 years. So I've been around for a while. And I think I was one of the first colour consultants, actually. But there weren't very many around when I first started. But there's a plethora of them these days. And I first started out just doing colour consults, and then my clients wanted me to do more and more. So it just evolved from there. And so I've done commercial work and residential work, and worked on some building products, because they have to be, you have to do colour palettes for those as well. So I've worked with a number of companies in the industry to do that, and I get involved in colour forecasting, so I like to keep up with the latest trends. And a few years ago, I had this urge to write a book, and I thought I must write a book. And you know how you kind of say I must do that, and you put it off for ages and ages, and then I went, no, I've got to do it now. And because I was sitting in the traffic one day, and I was looking at the sea of cars, and I thought, where are the coloured cars? Hardly anybody's got a coloured car. And because they're all silver, white and black. And I thought, why are people so afraid of colour, you know? So that's what inspired me to write Bye Bye Bland. And it was all about what I do is I take the reader on a colour journey, and so that they've got enough knowledge and build their confidence so that they can then go out and be inspired to use more colour. And I think my whole purpose in life is to bring the joy of colour into people's lives, because I know how transforming it is.
Yes. I mean, I love this topic because I think it's such a powerful colour. It can make a powerful change to anybody's. It sounds dramatic, but it does really make a change to your life if you come in with white walls and then you've really put together a certain pattern of colour that connects, and you do it with consideration. You do it, especially with an expert eye like yours, Judith. Can I ask you, for people that don't know what a colour consultation is in your world, what is it?
Well, the most simplest form is when if I'm doing the colours for the exterior of the house or throughout the house. But the thing is, a lot of people kind of think, we'll paint the house first and then we'll decorate it later. And so that means that you've got to be quite neutral to start with, because, but it's much better if they've got things in the house, we've got a whole plan so that you can make everything look so cohesive. Because often a palette will be inspired by an artwork people have, or a fabric in something, or that kind of thing. And that's when you can really make the whole room sing, but I go out to and talk to the people, and I like to get to know their personalities a bit, and I check in on what their tastes are and what their colour preferences are and their style preferences, and then I can hone in so that when I actually go out to make selections, it's not guesswork. It's I've got a fair idea of what I'm looking for that they will like. And I often have people say, you must be able to read inside my head because they just can't believe that I can tap in to the extent that I can see where they're coming from and what sort of things I like.
Wow, that's the part yesterday, Judith, and I was thinking that just some of the observations that you were making with your clients and the ways that questions you were asking when we were just chatting yesterday, I thought were really just not things that I generally would think about asking. So can I ask you, Judith, so someone comes in, they consult with you, and maybe just colour, it may be colour and furnishings. What sort of questions are you asking those clients to kick off in terms of direction?
Well, I start off with lifestyle questions. You want to know whether they entertain at home or it's just a family place, even down to how they use all the furnishings they currently have in the space, what they don't like about it, what they'd like to change, what ideally they'd like, and whether that's we decide whether that's possible or not, because sometimes it's not. But I had a client, and they had 3 sofas in their living room in a U shape, and I said to them, where does everybody sit? It turns out most of them lay on one sofa all together. So they obviously needed a modular lounge with a long chaise that they had a bit of space on to do that. And they didn't have a spare room because they had a large enough family that everybody had their own rooms. And so we end up getting a lounge that then doubled as a guest bed then, because it could be, the 2 chaises could be pushed together, and it made, quite a big sleeping arrangement. So it's little things like that, and it's if they entertain at home, then obviously it's important that we set up so that that's easily achievable. And that it gives me an insight as to whether they're more extroverted or introverted. And you can pick up a lot from just talking to people and observing what they're saying and how they live, I think.
So how would you approach colour for an extrovert?
Sorry?
How do you approach colour for someone who's clearly extroverted?
Well, they tend to want to make more of a statement. So therefore, you know, they want something a bit more showy. Whereas they want something that's maybe more refined, something that's more functional, that kind of thing. So, yeah, and I find people who are extroverted tend to like the brighter colours, whereas people who are more introverted like softer colours. So, and I think people get the wrong impression when you say I'm a colour expert. They think that I'm going to come in and put all these bright colours everywhere, but that's not how I work. Because you can use quite a lot of colour, but it doesn't have to be loud colour. If it's done well, it's very harmonious. You know, it's most people wouldn't realise there were that many colours there. So that's the whole beauty of, if you know how to use colour, you can actually put a lot of different things together and they just won't look loud and noisy, because the purpose is just to make it sing, not to make it shout.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking that colour consultant, I can imagine some people would think that you're coming in and going to do lime green walls and bright reds and red feature walls and sort of stuff from 1995 or something, but it's about being considered. And but do you think it's also about pushing people, or sort of, I don't know, encouraging people rather than pushing to take risks?
I like to make sure that I move people a little beyond their comfort zone, because I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't. But I ascertain how far I can go in that direction. But then there's lots of other ways of using colour. It's not about just making a beautiful space. It's you know, I've had people who have a hyperactive child, for instance, and so we make sure that the colours I select, you know, good for their well-being and keep them calm when they're at home, and help them sleep in their room and all those kind of things. So it's about how colour works in the way that you physically respond as well as how you emotionally respond.
Is there a calming colour that comes to mind when you think about that situation, needing to calm, say, a young child?
Normally sort of do some paler blues and greens, that kind of thing. So, and then there's other things in design that you do for somebody, you know, who had a child who had attention deficit or something like that, or autism. So, you know, there's a whole range of things that you can do to assist that. So that's where having a knowledgeable designer or colour consultant comes in, that can actually accommodate those kind of things. So it's not just about buying nice furniture and fabrics and painting the walls nice colours. There's a lot more to it than that. And colour actually nourishes us, you know. So when people start to be around colour a little bit more, they realise how beneficial it can be. And in workspaces, it can be quite energising and mentally stimulating. You know, it can be used like that, so that it encourages people to be more productive at work. So
we were talking about that yesterday, Judith. You mentioned to me you recently did an apartment, not an apartment, was it an office block, or it was some sort of commercial job, and you got feedback that the people were so sort of engaged in being in the environment that you'd created, that they were happier generally and happy to come to work, because you'd created spaces that were actually enjoyable to be around, obviously with the use of some of those colours.
Yes, exactly. And in an office space, I can embed the company values and all that kind of thing, so that it helps with company loyalty. So that means people don't change jobs as often, means they come to work, they don't take as many sickies, you know, and they're happy to come to work so that they're more engaged and, you know, they collaborate more, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's quite powerful. And until it actually is happening in the space, it's a bit hard to, we were talking about, it's a bit hard to articulate that to people, that's, you know, the benefit of doing it. It's not just about making it look good.
Yes, so there's an emotional sort of connection there as well, whether you know it or not,
Exactly.
a feeling to it. We actually got a question just while we're talking about that, Judith. Jan Marie's just asked, what would be your go-to white and soft grey? So we've got two here, double whammy. What would your go-to white and soft grey be for an exterior apartment building in a coastal environment?
Well, grey is going to throw a bit of blue probably from the water, if it's near the water, and it depends on the roof tiles that will interact with the wall colour. So there's a whole lot of and what buildings, what colour are the buildings next to it, because once we get into whites and soft greys, the other colours are going to reflect off them. So it's a bit more complex than just picking a couple of colours, because that's how I do exteriors. It's looking at the whole environment, it's looking at the aspect, what other things are going possibly interfere with the colours. Because, you know, sometimes people paint a building in a grey, and if it's got, say, a terracotta reddish roof, the grey might turn purple, you know. So
Yes.
they're all the sort of things that, you know, a colour specialist looks out for. So it's, yeah, if you could just pick a nice soft grey, you can kind of just go into the paint shop and do that, but it's not that simple as most people realise, yeah.
Isn't that great information though, Judith? Like I'm thinking now of all these scenarios that I've been in where I've noticed the colour has changed, and I think it's a really good point. I mean, this is the great thing about getting on these calls and chatting through this, is you can't just sort of, what you're saying is, as a colour specialist, your job is to go and look at that whole big picture. So as you were saying, you've got a lot of terracotta throwing off its rays against, you know, this colour grey. You've got to factor that in. I was in a rug showroom, Judith, and there was this big rug on the floor, and the consultant there said to a client, that rug is going to look slightly pink here because of the building across the road, which was this real salmon colour, and the light was reflecting that in and picking up parts of the pale or neutral in the rug, and it was turning it slightly pink. So it's amazing, you know, it's such a good point. You can't just pick a grey, can you? You've got to really think, well, hang on, I've got all this terracotta or whatever, so it's going to transform that colour. So I have to, what do you do in that colour, so in that situation? So you pick a soft grey and you've got a lot of, are you going to change the grey to a bluer base? Or
one other thing that happens too is it's to do with the way our vision works, that if you've got, say, the grey with the terracotta, your eye's seeing a lot of the red, and so then it tries to compensate with the complementary opposite on the rest of it. So sometimes it's an illusion, but that's the way everybody sees it. So, you know, you could take the paint colour away somewhere else, it'll look completely different. So there's, you know, it's understanding how our vision works as well, because, you know, it can play tricks on us like that.
Wow.
And people often think whites and greys are the easiest, but they're not. They're actually a lot harder than anything else, because white's going to reflect colours around it, and then the grey could do that, or it could actually be reflecting the complementary opposite. And I've gone to places where people have painted their walls white, but they're right near the harbour, and they're going, but it kind of looks peach, and that's because the blue, they're seeing so much blue, and then their eye is doing the complementary opposite of orange, and so when they're looking at the white wall, they're getting that after image that happens.
Wow.
So, you know, it's yeah, there's a lot of factors.
It's not easy, is it? It's not easy.
No.
And that's why you see some people making some substantial, I hate to say mistakes, learning experiences, but you'll get people that really are tearing their hair out over having painted, or it looked like this on the card, and you know, it doesn't look like this now that we painted it all over the walls. Can I ask you, Judith, I just was reflecting to something in the book. You talk about people's colour personalities.
Yes.
And that we all have one. Can I ask you what that means?
I found there's quite a lot of psychology involved in dealing with people, as you know, but I always tell people I don't do marriage counselling because most of us don't want to do marriage counselling when we're doing a project. But I find... We
become counsellors, though.
Oh, yes, I try and avoid that, though. Like,
January said good advice, and thank you, Judith, on that last one.
Thank you. Yeah, so I found that people's personality type often determines the type of colours they like, because we touched on that before when you said what sort of things would an extrovert like. Well, they tend to like bolder colours and black and white, you know, the contrast. They tend to gravitate to contrast and often more geometric shapes. And then somebody who's more of an introvert wants softer colours, more gentle lines, that kind of thing, so curvy lines. So once I sort of nail, you know, down at that sort of bit, you know, then I'm starting to say, well, will it be geometrics, or will it be more an organic pattern, or is the person, do they like more earthy, natural things? So it's, you know, and then that determines the palette, you know. It's much easier to... You're not going off thinking maybe this, maybe that, you know, and as you know, that then there's too many options out there, isn't there?
Yes, it's not only colour that you're directed by if you're getting a real awareness that you've got an extrovert or an introvert that you're working with. It's also around the shape and whether they're hard or curved lines, as you said, or sharper edges or geometry might be for an extrovert. It's always interesting factors, isn't it? It's not just colour, but it's all that goes along with how colour's integrating into to line and so forth. So,
yeah.
Where do you think we should pull back? So if we want to take a risk, Judith, just say we've got a home and we've got a number of rooms, and just say somebody wants to take a bit of a risk, they're bored, maybe they've lived for years with beige walls or white walls, and they've had their art, but they're thinking, gee, we could probably, I've had a bit of a look online, and I've had a look at Judith's website or my website, and I think I want to take a bit of a risk. Where do you think's is there a safe sort of happy medium maybe of where to take a risk with quite bold colour or pattern?
You can't really take too much of a risk with paint colours on the inside, because they're so easily changed and inexpensively changed. You know? So that's one way you can be a little bit more adventurous. And as you know, artwork doesn't always look good on a white wall. It often looks better on a coloured wall. So, you know, if you've got a favourite piece of artwork, then you could use a deeper colour behind it on that wall just to really make it pop. And then incorporate the colours. With colour, you just never have that one colour in one place, because then it looks weird. You need to have it, small amounts of it somewhere else in a couple of other places, just to make it a more cohesive design, and it doesn't look like, oh, I just did a coloured wall. Big deal, you know, it just looks a bit weird.
What do you think of the old feature wall? I've got my feature wall.
I still do separate coloured walls, but normally it's a 3D effect. You know, it's a recessed space, or it's like an L-shaped wall or something like that. So it's a block rather than a flat wall.
Right. Yeah, I think you and I are similar.
Yeah, and well, you do some great things with colour. I love your bands that you do around the walls and things like that. I think that looks amazing.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I think it's great. It's amazing. I mean, it is paint. I mean, you do paint it. It is a hassle to to go and repaint. But at the end of the day, it is just paint, isn't it? And it can be painted over. Do you use a lot of wallpaper effects, Judith?
I do. I use a lot of wallpaper, and that's one thing people need to remember if they have a designer come in and say the wallpaper goes up and the rest of it's not finished. Don't freak out, because just trust the process, because often that wallpaper that you think, oh my God, no, I'm not sure about that, looks fantastic when everything else is in the room. I use wallpaper quite a bit, actually, because it's an instant, it just adds an instant dimension that, you can't achieve with anything else, really. And it really adds a lot of personality to a room.
And I think it's the texture too, Judith. Just, you can have
texture and pattern, and I recently I did a coastal house for some people, and I thought coastal, everybody's doing that, How about we just do a bit of a twist on it? And I did a nice blue, grey and white shibori wallpaper.
Okay.
And when it first went up, I went, oh, don't know about that. But then when all the furniture was in and everything, it just looked amazing, and it was just that little bit different to your normal kind of coastal look, but it still had all the same colours, and so it had the effect and the colours that they liked without it, being too sort of, too run-of-the-mill.
That's interesting. Yeah, because, a lot of people like coastal, a lot of people like Hamptons, but it's about kind of going there, but also putting that spin on it, isn't it? So you have the shibori sort of Japanesey feel in the pattern. It is Japanese, isn't it, shibori?
Yeah,
Japanese sort of origin.
Hand dyed with indigo and.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Like we've got to also, as designers, be careful too, because if we put the wallpaper up, even though we know in our heads it works and we put all the pieces together, we might have done a mood board, we might have done something computerized and put it all together and we know it works. But I also find too, to you, Judith, that you still have to sort of say to yourself, it's just wallpaper, no furnishings at the moment. And when you isolate something without having it all together, all the pieces of the puzzle coming in, I still find that I have to stick to my original vision and just say this will work. And it does, but it is quite confronting. It's just interesting you were saying that.
Yeah, because it pops out. It's standing alone. It's how everything comes together, really, that really creates the magic in a space, I think. And so, a lot of people think we just come in to make things beautiful, but there's a lot of knowledge behind that, and there's science and processes and everything to come to that end result. And we put a lot of thought into it and a lot of planning. And so, they need to sort of trust us that we're going to make it all look fabulous at the end, because it's the combination of everything that really creates the magic, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're nearly at the end of our chat. It's been really nice, but I do want to let everybody know that this is the book by Bland. I picked this up from Judith not that long ago, and I haven't read it all, Judith, but I've just read through parts of it, and what I find about it is it's just a easy 3 sips. It's a very easy read, and it's an enjoyable read, and it sort of just explains things in basic layman's language, which is very good for someone like me. But if we want to tell people where to get this book, which is great because it talks about colour personality, colour combinations. So if you're really unsure about what colour combinations work, you've got all sorts of, not only theory, but just examples of how it does work. So where can... talk. If we've got another couple
normally you can buy it on my website, judithbriggs.com, but the website happens to be messing up today and it's very slow. So if you have any problems, if you just email me at info@judithbriggs.com and we can take it from there. And I'll personally sign your copy for you. The book is actually meant to take the reader on a colour journey. So through the knowledge that they acquire step by step, it'll empower the person to be able to confidently go out and use colour. So, and I've had some great feedback from people that have read it and said, wow, now I feel I can go out there and do that, and they're experimenting and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's really rewarding.
I think it's a great book because most people are quite perplexed and they get very afraid, and sometimes when they get afraid about choosing colour, they end up doing nothing, which sometimes is worse than making a mistake. So this is, I definitely recommend the book. So we'll put in the notes there, Judith, info@judithsbriggs.com.
Yes, that'd be great.
To get the book.
Yep. And yeah, it's an easy read, and it'll fit in your handbag as well. That's what a lot of people told me. Oh, I can just carry it around with me when I'm shopping.
Right. I haven't put it in the handbag yet, but I'll have to test it out.
Have you got a handbag?
Got a man bag.
A man bag.
I'll try it in the man bag. So we'll finish up there, Judith, but tomorrow, I know you've got a lot on because we've already had a good yarn, I think, yesterday, but you've got a big weekend on.
I'm having a weekend off for a change.
Hang on, you've got a big family event, haven't you?
It's not
big family do.
It's not a big event so much. It's just that I haven't seen a lot of them for a while, so it's a big catch up with a whole lot of extended family, so which would be lovely. What are you up to?
Fantastic. I've got a very low key weekend. So I don't really like to have many plans on the weekend, Judith. I don't like to have a whole list of events. I know that you're running around town during the week. I don't know how you do it. To me, it reminds me of when I was 22 or something. Whenever there was like an event, you'd sort of go to that one, go to that one, go to that one. And I get a bit tired and I'm thinking, God, how's she? She's here, then she goes to dinner, then she goes to another event, then she's driving that one home. So you wear me out. But it's been great to talk to you. I think we've learned some great stuff today, just definitely about paint and, gosh, really think about what's around you. You know, it's worth getting a colour specialist in to talk through that if you've got, especially the exterior paint colours, which is some amazing feedback there. But thank you so much, Judith. Have a wonderful Friday night and a beautiful weekend. And thank you, everybody, for joining. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Bye. See you guys.
Bye.